Morning, everybody present here. How are you all? Hope you are fine and staying safe. Once again, welcome to Class 12 English. This is Sir Manish Vijay. Welcomes you all. Yes, how are your studies going on, dear? Hope you are doing your studies regularly and learning. And you have read the chapter which I had taught to you in the previous classes. As we started a new chapter in the previous classes, that is the last chapter of your book Vistas, chapter number 7, Events, Tries and O-Level by Colin Dexter. And we have read till page number 7979. And today we are going to continue with page number 8080. So before starting today's lecture, I just want you to brief in short whatever we read in the previous classes. We have read that there is a character in this chapter, I can call it antagonist, named Evans, who is also popularly known as Evans the Brave, because he has escaped from the jail thrice and nobody in the north side of the country wanted to keep him in his prison. That's why he was just kept in governor premises. He was honoring the governor now, and he wanted to take the examination of German language, that is O-level examination, and all the preparations were done by the prison officers, by the governor himself, and he was there in his cell taking the examination. For conducting the examination, Mr. Reverend S. McLeary, who was a parson, he came there from a bachelor flat, right? And he was there in his cell and the examination was being conducted. Here, Stephens, who was the prison officer, was standing out of the cell, just peering through the peephole in every couple of minutes. And he observed the same thing again and again, that Evans was keeping his pen between his lips, staring in front at the wall, seeking for some sort of inspiration. And as McLeary, the invigilator, reading the newspaper, the Church Times, he saw that. And now it was 10:50 a.m. Exam started at 9:25 a.m. Now it was 10:50 a.m. and the governor got busy in his own work. He forgotten about the examination and Evans. When the speaker crackled again, he heard some noises that Evans was demanding to cover himself, to wrap a blanket around him. It was quite cold there. And as McLeary just asked him to be quick. We read till here. Now, page number 8080. Let's continue with the remaining part of the chapter. At 10:51 a.m., Stephens was more than a little surprised to see a grey regulation blanket draped round Evans' shoulders. And he frowned slightly and looked at the examinee more closely. Now it was 10:51 a.m. Stephens once again peered through the peephole, but he was a little surprised when he saw that Evans was covered under a regulation blanket. He frowned slightly. He doubted him, looked at him suspiciously, and looked at the examinee. Examinee is here, Evans. Looked at Evans more closely. But Evans, the pen still between his teeth, was staring just as vacantly as before. But Evans There was no change in him. He had his pen between his teeth and he was still looking at the wall which was in front of him. Only there was a change. He just covered himself with a blanket. Blankly, beneath a blanket. He was looking in front blankly under the blanket. Should Stephens report the slight irregularity? Stephen noticed some irregularity. Should he report about that to Jackson or the governor? Anything at all fishy? He thought it was fishy. He wrapped himself in the blanket. Hadn't Jackson said? He again thought himself that Jackson told him to inform him about anything if there was anything fishy. He looked through the peephole once again. Once again he peered through the peephole, and even as he did so, Evans pulled the dirty blanket more closely to himself. As Stephens peered through the peephole once again, Evans just pulled that blanket more closely to him. Now Stephens again had some more thoughts in his mind. Was he planning a sudden Batman leap to suffocate McCleary in the blanket? It was a question which came in his mind, that Evans wanted to suffocate McCleary like the Batman. Don't be daft. Daft means stupid. When these ideas were coming in his brains, he thought to himself that he should not have been stupid. There was never any sun on this side of the prison, no heating either during the summer months, and it could get quite chilly in some of the cells. Stephens decided to revert to his earlier every minute observation. Then a reason came to in his mind that in this cell, this part of the prison, there was no sun, no heating even during the summer still, and because of that it gets chilly sometime. So blanket is not an unusual thing. He just avoided that, and he decided himself to revert to resume his earlier every minute observation. It was not at all fishy, suspicious, no doubtful. He was in a dilemma there. He was confused. He did not know himself what to tell to Jackson and what not to tell to Jackson. And blanket, according to him, was not fishy. Let's see. At 11:20 a.m., the receiver once more crackled across the silence of the governor's office. It was 11:20. Again, the receiver was turned on in the governor's office, and McCleary informed Evans that only 5 minutes remained. Now this time, why the receiver was crackled? Because at 11:20, our McCleary, who was the invigilator, he was just instructing Evans, the examinee, that 5 minutes were left. The examination was almost over now, but something still gnawed away quietly in the governor's mind. Everything was done, the examination was going to be over, but there was something which was still troubling, puzzling the governor, which was there in the mind. He reached for the phone once more. 11:20, he reached for the phone once again. At 11:22 a.m., Jackson shouted along the corridor to Stephens. It was 11:20 a.m. Jackson was there. He was shouting in the corridor to Stephens. What he was telling? The governor wanted to speak with him. He was calling Stephens because governor's call was there, and he wanted to talk to Stephens. Hurry, man! Stephens picked up the phone apprehensively and listened to the rapidly spoken order. Jackson asked him to hurry up. Stephen reached. He just picked up the phone apprehensively. Write the meaning of apprehensively. Scary, full of fear. He was scared. He thought something wrong happened. He just picked up the phone and listened to the rapidly spoken order. From the other side, there were some orders which were spoken so fast, he just listened, did not speak. Simple thing. What were the orders? Let's see. Stephens himself was to accompany McLeary to the main gates. And these were the orders from the other side of the phone, that Stephens, who was standing out of the prison of the cell of Evans, he had to escort McLeary to the main gates himself. Understood? Stephens personally was to make absolutely sure that the door was locked on Evans after McLeary had left the cell. Understood? And Evans himself, he had to make sure that when McLeary was out, the door was locked on Evans. Fine? He had to take him to out of the main gate, and the door was to be locked. Understood? At 11:25 a.m., the governor heard the final exchanges. Now it was 11:25 a.m. The governor just heard the final exchanges, means McLeary was speaking some orders, giving some orders to our Evans. McLeary, stop writing, please. He asked him to stop writing. There was silence again. McLeary, put your sheets in order and see they are correctly numbered. Again, McLeary instructed him to put the sheets in order, in the number. Again, silence. Scrapping of chairs and tables. Some noises of chairs and tables. Evans, thank you very much, sir. He thanked him. McLeary, all right, was it? Evans, not too bad. He asked about the paper. He said, not too bad. McLeary, good. Mr. Stephens, he called Mr. Stephens very loudly. Means the examination was over. McLeary just collected the answer sheets. He instructed him to keep the sheets properly and everything. He took it. He asked about the examination to Evans, and Evans replied that all was well. Then McLeary called Stephens, who was standing out of the cell. The governor heard the door clang for the last time. The examination was over. Again, the door was unlocked. It was open. McLeary came out. Again, the door was closed. Everything was done. And the examination was completely over. How did he get on, do you think? Asked Stephens as he walked beside McLeary to the main gates. Now Stephens and McLeary, they were out of these cells, and Stephens was walking beside McLeary as he was escorting him to the main gates. He asked, how was he? How did he get on? Who? Evans. How did Evans get on in the examination? Ouch! I cannot think he has distinguished himself. I am afraid. He spoke that he could not think he has distinguished himself. Means Evans performed well in the examinations. He could not say that. He was afraid. Why he was afraid? That he would pass the examination or not, he was not sure. When he spoke these lines, his Scots accent seemed broader than ever, and his long black overcoat, reaching almost to his knees, fostered the illusion that he had suddenly grown slimmer. If you know, if you remember, he was an Scottish. When he spoke to him, his accent, which was different earlier, now seemed broader. Okay? And that long black overcoat, which was reaching to the knees earlier, which was above the knees earlier, was reaching to the knees now. And it brought an illusion to Stephen that he had got slimmer, thin suddenly. How could it possible? Stephens felt pleased that the governor had asked him and not Jackson. He was very much pleased, and because of that pleasure, he avoided these small things, that his accent was broad and he was looking slimmer. He was very much happy. Right? Because governor asked him, not the Jackson, to see McCleary of the premises, to drop McCleary to the premises. And all in all, the morning had gone pretty well. And after that, it was a wonderful morning. Nothing wrong happened. Examination was done properly. But something stopped him from making his way directly to the canteen for a belated cup of coffee. So he was very happy. So he wanted to have a cup of coffee. Belated means happy, joyful. But before he went to take the coffee, something stopped him on the way. He wanted to take just one last look at Evans. Before going to take the coffee, he just wanted to have a last look at Evans. It was just like a program he had seen on TV about a woman who could never really convince herself she had gone to bed. Often, she had got up 12, 15, sometimes 20 times to check the bows. So when he was going to check at Evans, he remembered one of the women in a serial TV program who had this problem. She was never convinced that she had locked the door of her house, front door of her house, when she had gone to bed. For checking, she got up many times, 12, 15, even 20s, to check the bows. You also would have seen many people who check the lock again and again after locking the door, after bolting it. It is their disease, psychological problem. So our Stephens was also behaving like that. I hope you are getting. So before reading further, let's see the question what is there. Did the governor and his staff finally heave a sigh of relief? What do you think? Did they have a heave a sigh of relief? Because the examination was over and Evans did not escape from the prison. The morning was well. What do you think? Did they have a sigh of relief or not? Let's see. Let's continue. Same page, last para. He re-entered D wing, made his way along to Evans' cell, and opened the peep-hole once more. Oh no, Christ! No, there, sprawled back in Evans' chair, was a man. For a semi-second, Stephens thought it must be Evans. A grey regulation blanket sleeping from his shoulders, the front of his closely cropped, irregularly tufted hair, awash with fierce red blood, which had dripped already to the small black beard, and was even now spreading horribly over the white clerical collar and down into the black clerical front. What is there? Let's see. He re-entered D wing. He did not go to take coffee. He just re-entered Deving made his way along the Ivan's cell. He reached to Ivan's cell and opened the peephole to peer through it. As he looked, as he peered through that, he was surprised. He shouted, "Oh no!" What he saw, sprawled back in Ivan's chair, was a man. Like suppose it is a chair, a man was lying there, sprawling back, like this. Fine. I hope you understood. A man was there, sprawling back in Ivan's chair. For a while, for a semi-second, Stephens thought it was Evans himself. But he was not Evans. A grey regulation blanket was there, which was just dripping from his shoulders. A man sprawled back, lying in the chair. Regulation blanket just slipping from the shoulder. The front of his closely cropped, irregularly tufted hair. His hair, which were very closely cropped, irregularly tufted, hair awash with fierce red blood. They were completely red with the blood. The blood was there. It was bleeding heavily. His whole hair were covered with the red blood. Had dripped already to the small black beard, and that blood was coming from from the hair to the head and coming till the beard, and was even now spreading horribly. And it did not stop there. It was even spreading over the white clerical collar, the collar of the shirt, which was white in color. It was all red, and down into the black clerical front. Now it is like a jacket. It is of a grey sort of color, and black clerical collar jacket was worn by McLeary. It was there on the black front too. So from hat, that blood has come till the jacket. It was completely red now. It was bleeding very profusely. He was hurt, who was lying in the chair. Now who was that man who was lying, sprawling back in the chair of Evans? Stephens got scared. Stephens shouted wildly for Jackson, and the words appeared to penetrate the curtain of blood that veiled McLeary's ears, for the minister's hand felt feebly for a handkerchief from his pocket and held it to his bleeding head, the blood seeping slowly through the white linen. As Stephens saw that, he shouted loudly, wildly for Jackson. That was the first time he was recruited that day only, and he shouted wildly. As he shouted, it seemed that his words, his noise, his sound just penetrate the curtain. As the blood was coming from the head, it just closed the ear. It caked there. As he shouted, it seemed that that cake which was over the ear got penetrated. छेद कर दिया यहाँ पर, किसमें? खून में जो जम गया था, और वो सुना. That veiled McLeary's ears, जिसने McLeary के ears को veil, curtained, that blood which curtained McLeary's ears got penetrated by the sound. And the minister, who was lying there unconsciously, his hand felt feebly means weakly, for a handkerchief from his pocket. When he shouted, maybe because of his sound, his shout, his ears listened some noise, and he just moved a little, and his hands just went to his pocket, and he took out handkerchief from his pocket and held that handkerchief to the bleeding head like this. And that blood which was seeping slowly through the soft linen, and that handkerchief also got wet in the blood, drenched completely in the blood. He gave a long, low moan and tried to speak, as he was unconscious earlier. He was getting consciousness. He just moaned and tried to speak. He was very much injured. But his voice trailed away. As he wanted to speak, he was not able to speak. His voice was very weak. And by the time Jackson had arrived, when this was happening, Jackson had arrived there. Means he was shouting, or McLeary, he was getting conscious. He took the handkerchief from his pocket, held it to the head, which was hurt very badly, tried to stop the bleeding, wanted to speak but was not able to speak. And Jackson was there now. I expect the scene is clear. Jackson arrived and dispatched Stephens to ring the police. Sent Stephens to call the police and the ambulance. Ambulance too. The handkerchief was a sticky, squelchy wad of lead. That handkerchief was that much drenched. It became quite sticky and squelchy wad of cloth. Bilkul, you can imagine. McLeary, who was there on the chair, sprawled back, it was McLeary. If he was McLeary, where was Evans? So the man who was escorted by Stephens was Evans till now. Who was dropped to the main gates by Stephens. This was seen. McLeary slowly raised himself. His face twisted tightly with pain. He was very much hurt. He was feeling pain when he got up from the chair. His face twisted with pain and he spoke. "Dinna worry about the ambulance, man. I'm right. I'm all right. Get the police. I know. Where he?" He got up and he asked him not to worry about the ambulance. He was all right. And he knew where that man was, where Evans had escaped. He knew that. How? How he knew? He closed his eye and another drip of blood splashed like a huge red raindrop on the wooden floor. When he was speaking, while speaking, he just closed his eyes. As he closed his eyes, one more drop of blood came from his eye, had passed through his eyes and fell on the ground like red raindrop. His hand felt along the table. He just felt something along the table, found the German question paper and grasped it tightly in his blood-stained hand. Just held it tightly in his hand, which was completely blood-stained, and asked Jackson, "Get the governor. I know where Evans." He asked Jackson to call governor as he knew where Evans was. Fine? Almost immediately, sirens were sounding. Sirens started making noise. Prison officer barked order. All the officers got alert. They were shouting different instructions, giving instructions. Puzzled prisoners, the prisoners who were kept in the different cells, they were all puzzled, confused what happened. Pushed their way along the corridors, coming to the corridors, pushing each other. Doors were banged, all the doors were closed, bolted, locked, and phones were ringing everywhere. And the phones were there. Within a minute, McLeary with Jackson. After a minute, McLeary came with Jackson and Stephens supporting him on either side. Stephens standing at one side, Jackson at one side, and McLeary was in between of them. He was coming, supporting by both of these persons. And within his face now streaked and caked with drying blood. That blood was completely dried over his face, and the blood, it became like a cake, was greeted in the prison yard by the governor. He was taken to the prison yard and the governor was waiting for him. Governor greeted him there, perplexed, completely confused, grim, serious. So this is the chapter till now. I just want you to read the chapter. Evans had escaped as per the story which we have read so far. We are going to continue with this in the next slide. That's all of my side. Thank you for listening to me.